And we are live,
Live, you say?
allegedly.
Allegedly, reportedly live, and just in time. I just got
Hey!
things sorted out.
Hey!
I was sorting a lot of stuff out. But Hapa, how you doing, buddy?
I'm fantastic, man. A little bit warm. We had this. I'm sure you had the crazy storms the last couple days. I know a lot of the country, southern end of the country, got hit with some crazy storms last few
But it's
days.
warm there, though.
Today, yesterday it was sunny, but it was comfortable. Today it's just straight hot. When,
Really? 'Cause
and,
it's 55 here. So
oh no, we were 80.
I was wearing a hoodie earlier.
85 today, and you can tell that
Wow.
storms passed through
Wow.
because it is swampy also. So reminds me of being back in southeast Texas, actually. So
know that
not a
feeling.
fun time. Yeah, man. Yeah,
Well, it is.
I'm sure you are an expert at that one because can only
Yeah,
imagine.
our subtropical climate here.
ugh.
And it's getting more tropical, less sub as the years go on.
Isn't that more deserty? Maybe.
Yeah, we're getting arid at some point. I think this is gonna be beachfront property. I'm holding out. My house is gonna be beachfront.
I'm telling you, get them pink flamingos out.
Oh yeah. Well, it is April the 11th, 2024. This is episode 17, Pineapple Smash. For those that don't know, we do tend to name the episodes after a drink that's made with some amalgamation of whiskey and other things. And Pineapple Smash, I got to be honest, Appa, when you sent me this recipe,
Oh yeah.
I was like, I ain't got time to get all this stuff
Yeah.
to make it. But had I gotten this like 3 hours earlier, I would have absolutely gone and gathered the materials because this sounded good. What is a pineapple smash? Appa?
Not gonna lie, yesterday I was like, I should probably go to the supermarket because this does sound delicious. It's right up my. I'm a big fan of citrusy or pineapple cocktails in general. So,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had Basil Hayden Kentucky straight bourbon before, but it's interesting to me. It sounds interesting to me. So I'm imagining a bourbon with some basil like undertones.
No, Basil Hayden's just a brand name.
It's just a brand, okay. So either
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
so 2 parts bourbon, half part simple syrup. So it's actually going to be a pretty sweet cocktail. But I mean, sometimes that's good. 2 dashes of bitters, 2 cubes of pineapple. So they literally, I think what they intended to do is you cut pineapple into cubes and you freeze them,
Uh-huh.
and then you put them in the drink that
That's
way.
kind of cool. I mean, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and then 3 lemon wedges, and I assume they want you to put that on like a pike that you're putting through the drink. Couple
You're
sprigs of
getting
mint
fancy.
for garnish. Yeah, it's well, not gonna lie, finding a new interesting cocktail every couple weeks is getting a little
I wondered when
challenging.
when we're gonna run out.
Well,
I
because
wondered.
I'm not gonna lie, I have all these drinks in my head. I just have no idea what the names of them are. So a lot like this one, I was like pineapple lemon bourbon cocktail, and then this just happened to pop up. I was like, oh hey, I know that one.
There you go.
So, yeah, but yeah, it sounds amazing. I think
It
mint,
does.
pineapple, and I'd probably cut back on the syrup just a bit because it seems like it'd be just way too sweet.
So Basil Hayden's is from the Jim Beam family.
Okay.
That's one of their small batch Jim Beam families, like the lightest of the Jim Beam. So it's a
Yeah.
very light whiskey anyway. So I bet you're right. I bet the sweetness is just.
Yeah, that's probably a bit much,
Probably.
especially when you're adding
Yeah.
pineapple wedge and lemon wedges and whatever. Anyway, either way, it sounded delicious, and that is this
That sounds
episode.
delicious.
So cheers to you, sir. That's not what I'm drinking.
Cheers to
but
you, my man. Look at that. That's a nice glass you got there. Cheers.
It's that one's little stepbrother.
Yeah, these are. Mel actually refuses to use these because
Why?
they are so heavy.
Oh, see,
Yeah,
I
she's
need to
terrified
buy
of
those
dropping.
ones. I have the little. You should get her the little baby. This is the smaller version.
That's actually a
that
good idea.
one.
Does this still
Yeah.
have the
Yep.
grooves on the bottom?
Yep. Yeah. Same exact. It's just smaller, and I didn't realize it until after I got these. Because when I got these, I was like, "Does Seven just have really tiny hands?" Or
I'm that tiny.
yeah. And so I went back to the website and I looked. I was like, "Oh, there's 2 sizes."
Yeah, there was a guy I used to work with. The guy was 6'10", and was huge, right? Like tall, yes,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
also just a very large individual. And when he would hold an iPad, it looked like an iPhone, and it used to really throw people off because he'd be like, the building we worked together in had like these long hallways, and you'd see it,
Right.
and you would just think it was someone way closer than they actually were. So like you would throw your depth. He was so
You're getting
big, you would throw
vertigo
your
while
depth
you're walking
perception
down the hall.
on. Yeah, it's just like a guy with it's like, oh, it's a guy with an iPhone. No, that's Frank, and he has an iPad.
He's carrying
he's
around a
all the way at the
27-inch
end of the
TV.
Yeah, exactly. Great guy. Hope you're doing well, Frank. Yeah, so this week, Hapa, we almost were on schedule. So Tuesday I had to punt, but we're doing Thursday. So we're on April the 11th. We do intend for the schedule to be Tuesdays. However, we are very casual about it. I'm very thankful to Hapa for letting me have the ability to move things around. The fact that we can move it means we can keep doing it, honestly.
Yeah.
We just have to move it and then I can do it. So we are here on April the 11th, which is a Thursday, and I'm kind of glad. I told you after Tuesday evening when we said, hey, we're not going to do it, I hit you up and was like, I'm kind of glad we're going to roll into Thursday because there's some stuff that we have a lot of stuff that we've gone back and forth on that we wanted to talk about that may show up in this podcast, but isn't really on our subject list. But I will say the Masters tournament started today in Augusta, Georgia. If you're a golf fan, and I am, it is must watch. So Bryson DeChambeau is leading. Tiger Woods is playing. Who knows how many times are left that you're actually going to see that guy on a golf course?
Yeah, seriously.
So it's really interesting because the weather's not cooperating. But in my opinion, the Masters is one of the purest, best sporting events on the planet. And I said that this morning when I was at work because, I mean, anyone who's watching the YouTube presentation of this podcast can see I'm wearing a shirt that is actually a Masters shirt. And I walked in and people were like, Masters. And I said, this is the greatest sporting event all year. And it was interesting because it became a conversation. Well, what about the Super Bowl? I have never cared who won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Here's why. My team's never been in the Super Bowl.
There's a very specific reason.
Right. Well, I mean, is it fun to watch? Absolutely. Right. And then same thing with the World Series and baseball. I love baseball. The White Sox have been there once, and they are never going to get there as long as Jerry owns the team. They're not going back. Right. But with golf and the Masters, everybody shows up, and so you're getting the chance to like really watch everybody. It's a cool tournament. So it's to me must watch, but I was glad we waited until today. So yeah, it's working out. Also, so you know, we talked about this a little bit. Almost got the other podcast studio ready, and so there's going to come a point where we're going to do this thing in one room, and we're probably going to try to get some other folks in the room with us and have some shenaniganizing on microphones.
Hell yeah! We can upgrade our podcast profile photo.
Oh, that's true.
We can get a new one. I'm a lot more hairy today than I was then.
I am too, actually. We both are.
Yeah,
actually,
we're a lot hairier.
Not
because we're getting older, but
shaved. I had my head shaved. Last time.
I'm pretty sure my hair was short and I was clean shaven. I'd have to look actually. Yeah, I'm both. Sure we are both clean shaven, and in that photo, it's wild.
Yeah, the having hair now. So I played baseball well into my 40s, and having a shaved head and shaved face was one way that I kept people from knowing how old I was, right? I was still competitive with 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. And if they knew how old you were, you would never hear the end of it. So that was a way that I avoided that. But now that I have facial hair and I have hair, a lot of people assumed I couldn't grow hair, but got stopped last time I was getting on a flight. Is this really you? And the person was like, the security person was like, is this really you? And I'm like, yeah, it's me. And she's like, is that really you? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, wow, you look way younger. I was like,
wow.
Oh, okay, thanks. So I spent all these years trying to look younger one way.
Right, yeah.
So but yeah, we have here now. That is not what we got together to talk about tonight, Hapa.
That's actually not the reason.
That
specifically.
That was not on the list of things that you added to our conversation.
Can you believe that was 3 years ago, by the way, that we took that picture?
It's too long, man. We got to figure out a better routine than that.
You, Mel, and the kids are just gonna have to uproot and move to Austin. Thanks, appreciate it.
The house down the street's for sale. I don't no lie. It's actually for sale. I'm just saying. Come on down. But
if I get a good interest rate, not gonna lie, I would be happy to, for sure. Can't be what I got now.
At the very least, we need to find ways to visit more often. We're not that far. We don't have to cross the Rockies to hang
Even
out.
well, for me, driving, I could do it in a day and a half. It's not too bad. So, but yeah, I am 100% down for coming out there and doing the podcast live in an actual studio, and allegedly I have to cook at your house. So,
that was dropped on Hapa right before the podcast. I didn't know what she was going to say to you, so my wife was like, "I want to talk to Hapa." So I just kind of pushed her mic. She has her own microphone in the studio, so I was like, pushed it over, and I was like, "What is she about to say?" And she was very clear that when we get the other studio finished and Hapa comes out, that he's now expected to cook us dinner in our house.
As one does when they visit friends. I don't think that's an actual thing, except for in my world.
That's not how Southern hospitality works at all.
Wait, what the hell?
What is this?
I was telling Seven and Mel, I've actually done that. I think 3 or 4 times. I've actually traveled to friends' houses and ended up cooking at their houses like 3 or 4 times. So it's not anything that I'm upset about. Because, I mean, look, Anthony Bourdain, rest his soul, said it best. Like, you truly and absolutely get to know somebody if you're able to sit down and share a meal with them. And people that are able to and willing to cook for other people, it's a great way to also show how you care and have that connection. Yep. So it's one of those things I kind of take to heart.
It's a love language, and
yeah, for sure.
For when you do come out, we've got a lot of things that we want to eat. You were talking about boiled peanuts earlier. So there's a lot of stuff on the thing.
Bowl peanuts.
Bowl peanuts.
Bowl peanuts. Well, that sounds really bad. All right. Anyway,
that's bad how it sounded when he said it. So we'll tell that story another day when we actually have boiled peanuts. How about that? That's
hey,
we should. You know what? We should do that when you come to town. Especially if we can get you and Deacon to town, we will have boiled peanuts as we're doing the podcast.
I would be very happy with that. Very happy.
Yeah, we can make this happen. All right, so today, Hapa, we have a pretty good set of things. And like I said earlier, we may deviate because we also had a bunch of things we did not include that we thought, wow, these could be really interesting stories. But I'm going to run through the subjects real quick. We're going to talk about the eclipse, and NASA has been gathering data on what weirdness occurred with the eclipse, especially with animals. We're going to talk about how many times the Earth has been hit by space junk, and it's space junk of a notable size, right?
Yeah. Not just every random little thing.
Right. Look at dust all the time. No. The kind of things that create the Barringer meteor crater, and you can talk. Right? So
or in the human lifespan, significant emotional events.
Yes. Are we overdue? Right.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about nuclear fusion, which I think is my geek button, right? Because I've been following nuclear fusion for some time. I have no reason to follow it, but it's just a thing.
That's just your random topic.
Talking about it is, and then we're going to do some of our standards. We're going to do what you watch in Hapa, what you hearing, or what you listening to. 7, what are we playing, and then Hapa's rules. We're going to go through and do Hapa's rules, and we're going to say, hey, we've been through the list of rules once. We're going back through the list and saying, hey, here's some of the rules, and here's where they came from. And you give us a little bit of a story about where they came from. Sound good?
Yeah, of course. I'm excited, man. I've been ready and willing.
I know, dude. I mean, full disclosure, before we get started, full disclosure to everyone listening. Hello, Kingston, Jamaica. For everyone listening, it's happened. I have not gotten a chance to actually hang out the past couple of weeks like we usually do. So this is us catching up.
It's been crazy
like we normally do. It's been a little bit insane. So if you are someone who is listening to the podcast, you got it on Spotify or you got it on Apple or wherever you got it, we appreciate you. We know you're out there in the world. Please come by and say hello, find us on Twitter, whatever. But also, we do this live on YouTube. If you want to find us, it's Real Talk with Hapa and 7. And the live has video. So you can also go check those out. They are pre-recorded. So depending on how you want to consume the podcast, we're here for it. But do check us out on YouTube. Check us out in if you're watching on YouTube, check us out in podcast land. Every little bit helps. So if you enjoy the podcast, just make sure you support it because we want to keep doing it. We want to do it at some point in wherever it was, England, wherever it was, Jamaica, right? We've got listeners all over the world. And at some point we want to go hang out with y'all.
And for those of
Be a
you
lot
out
of
in
fun.
Twitch land, I did save our little space there in Twitch. So Real Talk with Hapa S3VYN is on Twitch as well. It is branded
went
with
and
the
you did reserve it?
the same. I reserved the screen name. I got the
Nice.
picture branded up there and everything. We've been talking about it because the fact that I could stream to YouTube at a higher resolution than I can on Twitch is a pretty big deal to me, but at the same time, it's not something that I'm like locked into. So at some point, now that we're able to simulcast, we could probably just broadcast to Twitch and YouTube at the same time, and have both up. So whatever's convenient for folks. But yeah, that's just a side project that I think we're working on. I got to get more branding and stuff onto the page itself first, but.
We've talked about websites and other things. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if people have an opinion on what they'd like to see, we'd love to hear from you. I think probably the best way to get in touch with us is hitting up Hapa's Twitter, but we'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. Okay, Hapa, let's start with kind of the big events. You know, when we were talking Tuesday, we'll get to talk about the eclipse, and it was pretty cool. I was not in a totality zone. I don't know how far you were from it, but I was at like 89% or something like that. And it was a pretty cool day. How did your viewing of did you view the eclipse? How did it go?
So what was the last solar eclipse that went up the west coast kind of ish?
Yeah.
I happened to be in Portland, Oregon when that one was happening, and I think that was full totality. And then here
Gotcha.
where I live, I'm right on the edge of full totality, so I happened to get lucky for both and saw both. Unfortunately, here, in true, Austin style, it was cloudy. Like the 3 days out of the 365 days a year that it's cloudy,
Right.
it was cloudy during a solar eclipse. But I sat on the back porch, and just kind of looked at my neighbors and laughed at all of them, just looking up like something's coming to crash into us. But leading into this subject, one of the things that I really picked up on was the changes in all the animals out there, because out behind my house we have a lot of brown eagles, we've got rabbits, we've got all kinds of crickets, we've got raccoons, everybody's got their dogs, cats, all the various birds, everything out there. And as the eclipse rolled in, that transition for them, I'm assuming subconsciously it was day to night, I thought was really cool, because the birds were chirping and just doing their normal day stuff, and all of a sudden they just stopped and the crickets picked up, like it was nighttime for whatever it was, like 2.5 minutes or whatever, and then everything recycled again. It was really interesting to see that. And see the dogs, they didn't bark at each other, but they were all at the fences, kind of like looking around like, what is going on? Like, so that to me I thought was really cool to see. I mean, beyond the rubbernecking neighbors all standing out in their driveways and looking up. But
yeah, I mean, it was people watching was fun. We had so we sat in the backyard for about an hour leading up to it. It was a great day to be outside. We had lunch. I was working that day, but I was working at home, so we had lunch sitting outside, and we just kind of kept, we check it out, we talk, we check it out, we talk, we check it out, we talk. And I'll be honest, we got a really amazing view up until 1 minute before the best view, and clouds were like, no. So it was like an amazing view right up to it. But as the process was going on, so there's a few things that we this year. So we have a wooden privacy fence, and this year, carpenter bees. They're the big bees, and they're very aggressive because they'll bump you, but they can't sting you. Right? They can't actually do anything.
Yeah.
But they do a really good job of keeping wasps away. So we don't try to run them off. This year, there's a lot of them. They're also really good food for some of the birds we want around. So
okay,
it kind of works out for us. But as the eclipse was happening, two things that I really noticed were those bees disappeared. So I guess they were like, I'm going home.
Yeah.
My 2 chihuahuas, yes, I have 2 chihuahuas. I'll fight you. They're amazing.
The fact that you have to say that already says everything.
I was not a guy who believed chihuahuas were going to be the thing. I love those stupid dogs. So they were just, they're neurotic anyway, right? That's kind of their thing. And they were like, I'm not cool right now. And they were getting in our laps, and they were like giving us like a whole looking in your face like, I don't know if everything's okay right now. And like you, the birds just disappeared. So it was a really interesting event. with the eclipse. And I gotta ask you, man, the human behavior is fascinating to me. We know what an eclipse is.
Yeah.
We can predict it. It's very, very, very well known what's happening when an eclipse occurs. But man, some people freak out. And
100%.
it really strikes me that we are not that far from yelling ooga booga at the sky. We're not that far removed. The way some people are acting.
I will tell you, so I told you I was up in totality with the last eclipse, but what I didn't tell you is I was stationed in San Diego, and I had 5 days of leave, and so I chose to drive to Portland to visit my parents and my brother and all that, and that's almost 1,500-mile drive, right? And I had no idea that there was an eclipse even coming because I'd have been at sea for weeks. So I
you weren't even paying attention.
I had no idea.
In your little at sea ecosystem, and you weren't even.
And I went to the Navy Exchange, which is like a store on base. I was grabbing snacks for when I was going to drive up there, and just they happened to have the news on, and they were talking about how every hotel up the I-5 corridor on the West Coast was sold out. Gas stations were already out of gas, and I'm just like, what is going on? So I finally asked this, what is going on? Like, and the lady's like, there's an eclipse.
You're like Brendan Fraser in Encino Man. You're like, what year?
I had no idea. So then I started doing digging, and come to find out, they were saying, like, don't travel. Like, don't, because you might be stranded. You might run out of gas. So now I'm freaking out. I got a 1,500-mile drive, and I'm thinking, well, crap. So I did what any responsible Boy Scout would do. I went to the outdoor center there at the Exchange, bought 10 5-gallon gas cans, filled all of them up, and then strapped them all into the back of my truck. So I had a full tank of gas and another 50 gallons in case I ran out of gas. Now,
what kind of truck was it?
It was my Tacoma, so it's like 19 miles to a gallon.
But you get another 50 gallons. That's like 4 tanks. That's like 3 or 4 tanks.
It's a 20-gallon tank. 20-gallon tank. So 70 gallons
two
total.
and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be smart because when I hit the California-Oregon border, no gas stations were open. Like, none of them.
Really?
They were all sold out because Portland was like dead center. So everybody was congregating into Oregon to go view the eclipse. And like you were saying, like the crazy and look, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so it's okay for me to say that, but everybody that's up there is freaking bonkers already. So you added eclipse in there, and but I ended up using all of that gas, and it but here even was the same thing,
right?
Yeah, no, it didn't waste at all. But from here all the way to Maine, I guess the states were declaring states of emergency and all this stuff because of the same reasons. Like, everybody was traveling.
It's been amazing to me. People, the world is ending. It's crazy what has gone on. We were at so we didn't fail to get glasses, but we were at a store and we were going to get glasses. In the store, it was a grocery store, so we didn't expect to see the glasses there.
Yeah.
And so they had glasses. And there was 2 people. It was a mother and a daughter were ahead of us, in line, and it was me and Mel, and we're there to buy the stuff and check out. And the woman who's working at the store she actually says to this couple in front of us, they go to pick up the glasses, and she goes, I don't know, $2? I'm not a doctor or anything, but I think sunglasses would be just fine. And that's what she said, and I just went,
oh my
you are
goodness.
indeed. I said, you are indeed not a doctor. I'll take 4, please. You are indeed. Like, what horrible advice if someone walks out and they're like, yeah, let me put on my cheap, $4 gas station sunglasses with the orange rims and stare at the sun.
So first of all, people don't realize that you're not supposed to, the normal sun, you're not supposed to go stare at it, right? Like
not recommended maintenance for your eyes.
Right. So when you have an eclipse, if you guys want to think about how people probably don't know how light dispersion works, but if you look at the sun, yes, it's bright, but that brightness is kind of dispersed over a wider field because it's just in the open. right? When you put the moon in front of the sun, you intensify the brightness because there's a dark spot in the middle, and it's got this laser edge around the end of it, and that's the reason why they say to wear these glasses. I don't know if anybody ever have seen it, but like I was going to ask you, did you look at the sun? Well, you had clouds at the time. I couldn't see it either because we had clouds, but I remember from the last eclipse, the sun cutting through trees and then casting the shadow on the ground looked amazingly cool, right?
No, we actually got to see that, and it was fascinating.
Okay.
It's yeah, we had perfect viewing right up until like 2 minutes before.
Okay.
Like it was at 89%. So yeah, that was fascinating, and you know, it was fun to talk to the kids. And one of the things that I guess I never thought about it, but I certainly didn't realize. I was reading an article that NASA had published about how rare this type of eclipse is, galactically speaking. Right? The things that have to occur, as far as they know, Earth is the only planet that has this. Meaning the moon has to be in exactly the right distance and exactly the right size and exactly the right orbit for this to ever be a thing.
Right.
And we're the only planet they know of that has a moon that is exactly the right distance and exactly the right size and exactly the right orbit to achieve a total eclipse like that. So the effect of when the moon actually covers the sun and you get the kind of exploded ring around that is, they think, unique. And that's pretty cool. That's like that to me. That's pretty cool. But definitely Ray-Bans aren't good enough. So I would not recommend that.
What do you mean? My Hawaiian Jim sunglasses aren't going to work out for me?
Yeah, your Maui Joes.
Yeah.
The one you got a little your Costa del Noir.
Yep.
Your Mostas instead of your Costas.
You
your
know,
Joekleys.
You and I have talked about this before, though. How, I don't know what the word is. How humans are in general towards like, oh, we're in space, big deal. Like,
we're in space, right? Like,
oh,
yes.
we
Yes,
sent a probe to the moon. Oh, we got somebody going to the Mars. Big deal. Like, whatever. So what do we have for dinner? Like that kind of like we have that mentality. We don't think deep enough, and I don't know. Maybe we've just gotten so wrapped up in our own BS on the planet that we don't have bandwidth to think about that stuff. But like, stop and think about that crap for a second, people. Like that's pretty amazing if you ask me. Really, I mean,
I agree. We are a very, very, very small part of this universe. And if you believe in Fermi's paradox, we aren't the only ones, right? So it's interesting to watch how people viewed the eclipse, how animals acted. There's some videos out there. We have a pretty interesting, NASA was looking for some feedback, and then some zoos were reporting, hey, how the animals act, and what they do, and some of the animals acted. And then you've got like giraffes, they're like, just give me some more lettuce, right? They didn't care at all. Like,
where's my bamboo?
So, you're still gonna feed me, right? Like that's
That's kind of, you guys are gonna be around, right? Later.
And the elephants were like, we're going to bed. They went back inside. So it was interesting to watch. We learned a lot from these eclipses. I think the next one's not. The next one's a pretty good ways off.
Yeah.
Or at least in North America it is. So it was a pretty cool viewing. Got a lot of friends up in the Ohio area who were really close to totality. They drove over and did that. So those are kind of cool memories. I did. 2044. There you go.
Is the next.
I did see an interesting video of a kid who was trying to use a telescope to view the eclipse. Which,
oh my God.
Let's be honest. Some of the best pictures we've gotten are from people doing this. They're generally professionals, and there's a lot of setup. If you're going to amplify the sun, if you're going to take a telescope which amplifies things, 100,000 times, whatever it is, and you're going to say amplify the sun, you're taking,
laser beam.
Right, you're taking a chance. And I saw this video of this kid. He was like looking in the telescope, and I was like, just with his eye, and I'm like, what is he doing? He was like looking in the telescope, and he couldn't find the sun, and he kept like trying to look up, and he bumped the telescope, and it obviously went. He was looking to his side, and obviously caught the sun, and a dot appeared on the side of his face. And the way he started jumping, it was like he turned it into like one of the world's most powerful lasers.
Oh, it's hot! It's hot! It burns!
Well, yeah, no kidding. It's hot. It's the sun amplified. And it's a pretty interesting thing to talk about how hot the sun is when we're this far from it, we still get the heat and the light on the stuff. I don't need to amplify that directly into my retinas. That's not my bag.
To be clear, the folks that are looking at the eclipses through those telescopes that are professionals are typically running them through the images through some filters to try to
they spend a lot of time prepping. It's a very specific kind of thing, and leave it to the pros.
I have always said that there's events like this that make me question our apex position on the planet.
Position, tool. Thank goodness for tools.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, our opposable thumbs have taken us very far.
yeah. The pink. We're pink and squishy on the inside, and I was actually watching. Well, we'll talk about that later. I was watching Fallout, so maybe we'll talk about that later. But we're pink and squishy, so our apex position is definitely. When you see people and the way they act, and I read something online where someone was saying the sun's only 3,000 miles away, the moon is fake, and I'm just like, how are you guys? Even if I were writing fiction, I wouldn't write that, right? Like, so, but the eclipse absolutely drove some people, bananas.
Yeah.
So.
But on the flip side of this, though, I love, by the way, and I didn't do much digging, so I don't know how common this is, but I love that NASA sent out a call to everyone to ask for their observations of animals during the eclipse as their, like, group-sourced data mining. I think that is something... I mean, first of all, the data probably is insanely daunting to try to sift through, but at the same time, I think it's amazing that they're doing stuff like that. It's fantastic. So,
NASA is, we talk about this a lot here on the podcast, but NASA is one of my favorite organizations. Voyager 1, if you're not keeping up with the saga with Voyager 1, go check it out, right? That thing has gone a long way, right? Leaving our galaxy, and they're still communicating with it. They're actually fixing a chip went bad. They're fixing it remotely. Like, this is what these people do. So anything that gets people engaged with NASA makes me happy, and anything that gets people outside looking up at the sky and wonder, like just in that moment of like childlike wonder, that to me is a good thing. I don't have any negatives there, right? Just go outside, look at the sky, think about our place in the universe, and get humbled. If you really think about it, you're going to get humbled, right? You look around and it's like the space is big.
Well, you and I have talked about it before.
Our little spaceship.
It's hard to. I feel like today it's harder to have that level of wonderment that maybe you and I did when we were younger, if we went camping and stuff like that. Just because the amount of light pollution that's on the planet. I mean, even scientists have said the amount of light pollution on the planet makes it very difficult to just see regular stars during the nighttime.
And it's getting worse and worse, right? Like light pollution is becoming. It's just becoming a more and more. You live in Texas, I live in Alabama. We actually still have access to some places that aren't so bad.
Yeah.
Comparatively speaking, relatively speaking. So it's just those places are disappearing pretty quickly. So, go look at the sky.
Yeah, seriously.
And so segueing that, Hapa, into our next subject, maybe you look at the sky and an enormous meteor lands on your head. So you put this subject on here, and the subject title is "How many times has the Earth been hit by space junk, and are we overdue?" You also did not put a link, so I have no idea what you were thinking when you were putting this on there. So tell me more about the. Is it Behringer or Beringer?
Behringer. So Behringer crater is probably the easiest accessible crater in the United States for folks to go and see. This is a subject, by the way, that I've nerded out on since I was a kid. Just because I've always been blown away by, space and the fact that we're on a planet. And I've always looked at the moon from when I was a kid. You saw craters all over the moon. So, craters all over Mars and craters all over any planet that we can get a good eye on. But here we are on Earth, and if you get a picture from space, you really can't tell. But there are craters on Earth.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely there are. Yes.
And the Barringer crater is, and I actually took Rita there last year when we drove out.
Oh, you guys went
to
and saw
Oregon.
it. That's cool.
We went and saw it, and it's a place that I'm like, I went there when I retired from the Navy. I went on an 8,800-mile road trip around the United States, and that crater was one of the ones. Like, as I was driving down the interstate, I didn't even know it was there, and I had an app on my phone that said, "Do you know you're near this landmark?" And I was like, "What?" And I hit it, and I was like, "Oh crap!" And I flipped a UE and went back and went and saw it. But they literally, it's just a crater, and it was an impact that happened a very, 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 very long time ago. I don't remember the time frame off the top of my head, but it was like pre Native Americans being here. So that whole area. So from Texas, a lot of people that don't know, Texas and the Gulf of Mexico all the way to the land or the Pacific was underwater at some point. And you can see it if you drive through those states, the southern states. You can tell it looks like the bottom of a riverbed, like a giant riverbed. And they've got rock formations that they have fish fossilized all around the crater and everything. And the reason I bring this up is recently I've been a follower. I don't know if you know who Randall Carlson is.
I don't.
So he's a guy that kind of follows the fringe thought process of history and geology and archaeology a little bit. He gets kind of a lot of crap from mainstream science because he believes, like case in point, that the humans have been around on the planet for significantly longer than we think. That there's been societies on the planet for significantly longer than we think. Things like
I know this guy. I've seen this documentary. Yeah.
Yeah. So he thinks that the pyramids and the Sphinx and all them were built well before the Egyptians and so on and so forth. Well, one of the things that recently I saw an interview with him, they were talking about meteor strikes and asteroid strikes and comet strikes on the Earth. And the question came up, well, how is it that we have no real evidence on this planet of those strikes? And he's like, whoa. There's evidence everywhere on this planet. There's evidence right now. They believe, and they've counted, a total of around 200 strikes on the planet. That doesn't seem like much, except for 2/3 of the planet is underwater. So the only strikes that they know of are on land, and that's 200. So he's like
preserved, right? That's part of it. Is depending on where these land, when they landed. If it was a wet area, these things erode, right? They turn into lakes. There's a lot of, like you said, the Earth's 80% covered in water. Like this 200 that we know of, and that's just what we know of. And we haven't really had the technology to go find them until very recently. And that's satellite imagery, right? So there's definitely, I agree with that. There's absolutely evidence of Earth getting pelted by stuff.
One of the ones that he talks about was in and around the Yucatan Peninsula. So if you guys aren't good with geography, you've got Florida that goes up and around, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, down into Mexico. So you got the Gulf of Mexico. The Yucatan Peninsula is down near the southeastern end of the Gulf of Mexico. So they were doing some oil rig drilling, I think back in the 90s or something like that. And when they were getting these cores on the Yucatan Peninsula, they hit layers there that had high levels of iridium in it. And iridium is not a naturally forming thing. Like it only gets formed by essentially nuclear explosions, right? So what they've learned over the years of doing all this research is that iridium and microdiamonds and lots of carbon and stuff like that tends to show up at impact sites. Well, they found an extremely high level of iridium, like abnormally high. So they're like, well, a meteor must have hit here, and it had to have been a fairly large meteor. And at this time, it's weird to me that this wasn't something they thought about prior, but at this time they started to look at a little bit higher altitude at images of the Earth to try to find these strike points. And some scientists somewhere said, hey, the Gulf of Mexico going around to the northern end of South America kind of almost is a full circle. Like, what if that's a striking point? And the iridium, they put that all together. They said, so they believe that the meteor strike that hit about 12,900 years ago or something like that near the end of the last ice age, and may have actually been the reason for the end of the ice age.
Oh, really? So you're talking about the space, like you've got all the way. Again, people who aren't really familiar with this geography, both Hapa and I are very familiar because the Gulf Coast is just that's where I'm at. So you're talking about the Gulf Coast is a big round,
huge
seeming thing.
Yeah.
You're talking about this basically the southwest portion of the Gulf of Mexico, where the Yucatan Peninsula, which is southeast Mexico, right, which kind of runs out, and you're talking about that area.
Yep. Yeah, and if you look at the placement of Cuba and Haiti and all the islands there, and you take another zoomed out view, what it looks like is the ocean was still there. The Atlantic Ocean was still there, but the entire Gulf of Mexico and all those islands wasn't underwater. Like, it might have been wetlands or it might have been at sea level, and the meteor kind of hit at an angle there and kind of carved out a hole, and the ocean flooded in, and that's why those islands are kind of weird positioning, because that was land that literally was liquefied by the strike, and it moved the soil, and then the water rushed in, solidified all of it, and boom, you got Haiti and Cuba and all these little islands that are out there on the eastern side of the Gulf of Mexico. And so I remember the interview saying, well, that was the end of the ice age. Well, how did people survive? It's like, well, if you look at the numbers of megafauna is categorized by any animal over 100 pounds, okay? North America, South America, Eurasia lost 2/3 of all megafauna at the end of the last ice age. So you're talking all mammoths, all the large cats, all the large, any animal.
Your land sloths.
Yeah, literally, actually, because they had giant land sloths, right? Africa lost like 11% during the same time frame. Well, where's Africa? Almost reciprocal, opposite side of the planet of where the strike would have hit. Then beyond that, they've found there's a guy in Alaska, and there's another guy in on the northwestern side of South America. They've found major troves of woolly mammoth bones, and not like, oh, here's a woolly mammoth. Like, if you took 1,000 woolly mammoths and you jumbled them all up
and exploded them.
Yes, yeah, and then you jumbled all their bodies up and made them roll for 60 miles. That's how they were finding them. It was not, there was no order to the deaths like you normally would find.
Like or like the La Brea tar pits where they laid down,
got stuck and eventually died or whatever.
Right.
Like, so what it looks like is a major flooding event rolled through a plane and just picked up all these animals and moved them hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles, and they died, and unfortunately, lost limbs and what have you while they were going. So it's like all this stuff points back to what they think is this major impact that happened at the end of the last ice age, and so it's like crazy to think, because I remember growing up, they talked about woolly mammoths when I was in school, and they said, oh, the woolly mammoths went extinct because humans hunted them out to extinction. And a lot of scientists were like, wait a minute, you know what the population of the planet was back then?
It was like 10,000 humans. That would be
10 million.
Hunting.
There was 10. They estimate 10 million humans globally.
10 million? Okay, cool.
Do you know what the woolly mammoth population globally was?
Right.
12 million. So you're telling me, hold on a minute, because of that 10 million humans, you've got babies, you've got elderly, and you've got women, which are usually busy, not to sound sexist, but they were doing whatever they did at the cave and the foraging, and while the men went out and hunted. So you're talking about maybe a quarter of that. So 2.5 million men hunted to extinction. 12 million mammoths. Now, I'm not a science major, but the mammoth seems kind of a huge animal for me to be killing them repeatedly. Like, my family better be living high on the mammoth. To where I need to be eating them out.
I don't think my family could eat one a day. I don't think.
Right?
I don't think we could.
And that's what a lot of
I've
scientists
seen,
are like, what do you mean we hunted them out of? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
Gotcha. Yeah,
So,
a mammoth. I've seen what a cow. When people have, there's people who have a cow butchered. I've seen how much
yes,
meat you
that's a
generate
whole
when you have a
year
cow
or
butchered.
more, right? Like,
Right, a mammoth would be. Now, there's no way to store it, right? But a mammoth would be a lot of
yeah.
food.
And so, that science just doesn't hold up when you think about this stuff. So you've got that, and then Tunguska, if in case you guys don't know, I think was that 1908 or 1911? I could never remember. I think it was 1908, I believe. Yeah, 1908 was an explosion. Well, they believe it was a comet, a fragment of a comet that exploded 5 miles above the forest in Tunguska, Russia. And the only reason they knew about it, this explosion was in the middle of nowhere. Like literally nowhere. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles of nothing, just a forest. And there was people that went to Tunguska to study this event because they had heard talking about it. And the only reason that they knew was at the time there were people that were alive when this happened. And they had an oral history that they talked about with their families, and they interviewed a lot of, because at this time where that was in 1908 in Russia, it was a bunch of herders, reindeer herders, and they had a really, really, really bad, hunting season that year because a lot of the herds were just vaporized from this explosion, and the explosion was the explosion was so loud that they're estimating it to be 50 megatons in size. That, to give you an idea, the U.S., the largest hydrogen bomb that we ever blew up was 40 megatons. So at 5 miles up, it blew up, and they heard it like 40 or 50 miles away. That's how loud it was. Blew out windows and everything.
So there. Okay, let me read this back to you.
Yep.
I've never this. You have found something.
You want to go down a rabbit hole? Go research this. It's crazy.
I will absolutely be rabbit holing tonight. I will be Alice, right? I will be tumbling down the rabbit hole. So what you're saying is an event occurred. No doubt about an event occurred. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
The damage of the event, no doubt about that. We know that occurred.
Yep.
Eyewitness reports, people, written reports, like it wasn't so long ago that we didn't have that, right? It was a thing.
Yep.
Now, the question remains, are you saying the question remains, what was the event? And they believe it's a thing, and we don't know for sure, but there was an explosion above the ground. What do you, I don't understand the physics of the explosion part of it. Now,
okay, so
like a meteor hitting the planet, I got, right?
Yep.
That I got. So is this super cooling? Like, what is the...
I love that you asked this question because that's actually where I'm headed. So you've got 3 types of strikes, essentially. Well, you don't have 3 types. These are, I'm talking about 3 different types. You've got the Barringer crater, which was obviously a strike, a hard, dense iron asteroid that hit the Earth. And they estimated, I think 30 to 50 meters was the size of the asteroid that hit in Barringer, which, by the way, if you don't understand 30 to 50, that's about 200 feet across ish, but the crater that it left, you cannot get an idea of how huge that crater is until you're on the edge of it looking across. Like, it is.
Well, so I read about it when you said it. Let me read this.
Yep.
The meteorite weighed 300,000 tons and traveled at a speed of 26,000 miles per hour, which is 12 kilometers per second. When it struck the Earth, it exploded with the force of 2.5 million tons of TNT. That's about 150 times the force of the atomic bomb that destroyed Hiroshima.
Yep.
That's pretty intense, man.
So there's that one. That's solid. And then the strikes that the other ones we're talking about, which is like Yucatan Peninsula, right? Which we can't really see evidence unless you're looking at the Earth from a satellite, because that's a water hit, right? And then there's the ones that are not as dense, and that's where I'm getting at. Is the Barringer asteroid was a dense piece of iron, so it was solid. It was,
And still vaporized.
Yes, and hit the Earth, left a crater, threw soil up hundreds of miles around. There's evidence of from that location hundreds of miles away. And then you've got the Tunguska blast, which is a very, what's the opposite of dense? Not dense. Like, I don't know what the opposite of it is. I guess.
What is,
But-
I'm going to look that up. Opposite of
Yeah,
opposite
what
of
is the
dense.
opposite
Smart.
of dense? But
Come on.
but what you're talking about is a asteroid or comet, piece of a comet that is so not dense that when it hits the atmosphere, the heat that's produced and everything superheats whatever it is, and there might have been hydrogen in there, like hydrogen ice or whatever, and then it detonates in the atmosphere.
Have literally been a hydrogen bomb.
Yes, 100%. Like, it could have been a solid thing of hydrogen ice for all we know. We don't know because there's no evidence. It's just all that it was evidence was trees for like 150 miles were just flattened, around this area. And the only way, by the way, that they put together that this Tunguska blew up in the air, by the way, was they saw the devastation from Hiroshima and the way that the damage worked, and how the very center of where the bomb blew up was the building was still standing and everything. And when the scientists went out to Tunguska, there was trees standing right in the middle of this blast zone, but everything else for 100 some miles was just flattened or vaporized.
Imagine you're sitting there, you're a giant ground sloth, right?
Yeah.
You eat some. Well, I guess it's Siberia. You're probably not a giant. You're a reindeer herder. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like chilling. You're like, what the heck is that? Or this thing, it wasn't quiet.
You could see it. You 100% could see it.
Right. And the way it was described, I was just reading the Wikipedia, is like the sky split open.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
No,
My
that would
gosh.
be well, I guess I'm
As much
done.
as I would,
like.
yeah, as much as I would like to see it, I don't. It would be the last thing you saw.
But so I tell you all this because I go back to the beginning where we talked about how scientists estimate we've been hit 200 times. Again, 200 times that we can measure because we've seen craters on ground. So the Earth is more than 2/3 water. So how many times have we actually been struck? Well, the estimates are 2 to 3 times more than 200. So you're talking
Just mathematically speaking.
correct. Now, you asked at the beginning, are we overdue? Well, supposedly, a major strike happens about once every 5,000 years. We haven't been struck for 12,900 years. So,
We're going to keep on rolling those dice, happen. We're at
I'm
the
just
craps
saying.
table. We're rolling.
and I tell you this to go down, you want to go down a whole nother rabbit hole, if you want to think about how many ancient civilizations have been, like, talked about tracking the sky and looking at the sky and looking at the constellations and looking at, like, they knew about Halley's Comet before we called it Halley's Comet. You know what I mean? Like, they knew all this stuff. So, to me, the tinfoil hat side of me makes me think that all these civilizations have had such a crazy fascination with the sky because they always knew that they needed to be keeping an eye out for, well, giant freaking rocks hitting the Earth, right?
I mean, to a degree, we haven't changed. We are still
Right.
keeping an eye out.
Yeah.
There's a very few of us. Right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we have. You'll get the reports occasionally where NASA or the European Space Agency or someone is like, we're tracking an object. It's going to pass between us and the moon, and that's cosmically speaking, that's a pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close call. So yeah, no, I think that I would really hope that we got to witness that and it didn't kill everyone.
Oh, man. When is it? There's supposed to be a meteor or a comet in the next 10 years that is going to pass so close to Earth that it's actually going to cross the line that our communication satellites orbit in.
What?
Yeah, I'm not even kidding about that. I saw... Oh,
Well,
God.
that sounds like you need to find that. We need to talk about that on the podcast. I want to know.
What's the Neil deGrasse Tyson recently was doing an interview, and I wish I wrote this information down because I was like, what? Like supposedly there is going to be a comet or an asteroid that is coming at the Earth. Is it 2029? Okay, yeah, 18,000 kilometer range. So I don't know how to say your last name, so I'm going to call you, or your screen name, so I'm going to call you Daka. But he's got the information. Obviously, that's how close this event is going to be. Is 18,000 kilometers.
18,000 kilometers. All right. Well, cool.
If you really want to not sleep from now until then, like,
I was feeling all good until the podcast.
Oh my god,
good day happened. You
So-
gotta be worried about
so-
not looking up.
and to give you an idea,
Don't
like,
look up, Napa, just don't look up.
we talk about how we've had this fascination with the sky and everything, and you had mentioned just a minute ago how little of a group is doing that now. The best movie quote that you could ever have that I think sums up that is from Armageddon, where the guy says, "Our object collision budget is $1 million. That allows us to track about 3% of the sky. And beg your pardon,
Yeah.
sir, but it's a big ass sky." Like,
Yep.
I mean, that's
It's a tiny
it's-
community that's watching
Yeah.
out for this stuff, right? It's not a well-funded thing. We put a lot of money into a lot of things. That's not one of the things we put a lot of money into. We did. We went to the moon, and JFK issued the challenge and said, we're going. And we went. And
And then we stopped.
as a society, right, we put a lot of money and energy and resources into it. Our best and brightest, that's what they were doing for a living. That's not what they're doing anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a very niche thing now, and that's unfortunate. However, Hapa,
Oh.
moving us on to the next subject, there are some people out there that are still doing some really cool science. And how did our podcast become about science? We're a bunch of idiots. Like,
Well, no, you and I have always kind of had that nerd
How did
level
that happen?
anyway. I just think we've gotten a lot more technical with our nerd ideas.
I'm here for it. But let's make sure anyone who's listening understands we are in no way qualified to talk about these things. We are.
Oh
we're
yeah,
a couple-
I've
we're a
literally
couple of
talked it
dummies
out
who
of
are
my ass for the
hobbyists.
last hour, so
we love to go read about this stuff and learn about
Yeah.
it. And we do give a hand over heart, honest efforts
Yeah,
to try and find real information. It's not just let's look up whatever someone said on Facebook. That is not what we do. And it's interesting to me that our podcast has gone that direction. So there.
Let
are
me
some
ask you
scientists
before we
in
move
South-
on. What would you do if you knew, like, if they went on the news today and said,
Yep.
we're gonna get hit by something that may or may not end human civilization. What would your plans for the future be, do you think?
They wouldn't be too much different than what I do right now. I would probably not spend as much time working, right? And I think that's probably that would end up being a cliche answer.
Yeah.
So that's probably wouldn't be too much different. I have a pretty fulfilling life, and I would just be like, hey, let's just hang out with the people we love more. Let's just do that. I think that would be the thing. I'd probably actually, I don't know. I probably would not work anywhere near as much.
Yeah.
If it was a don't look up situation where it's going to end humanity, I wouldn't go to work at all, right? It's like
Yeah.
I enjoy what I do. I like working. It's a very rewarding thing to do. It likes me, it's a very I enjoy it, right? It's not like I hate it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
man, if it came down to it, not me, the wife and kids, we can go do something. We can play golf or something.
Yeah, man. Fair.
How about you?
I would definitely have. We keep quoting the movie "Don't Look Up." If you guys haven't seen it on Netflix, go watch it. It's
Oh
a
my
great
God! If you
film.
haven't seen Don't Look Up, you got to start there. Like, if you want to start anywhere
Yeah.
for our podcast, if you want to do anything to get ready to listen to our podcast for the first time, go watch Don't Look Up,
And then go
We'll
back
excuse
to our
you,
first episode.
and then come back to what we're doing. Yes.
I call "Don't Look Up" a serious satire because it really is a serious satire.
It's a little on the nose, and it's
Yeah,
like Idiocracy, right? It just is kind of a So what would you do?
I definitely would take from that movie and be like, look, you just need to be around the people you care about and share a meal at the end there. And I'm not the type of
Yeah.
person that's like, I'm gonna start digging a bunker right now. And no, man. Like if it's gonna knock
right.
me out, it's gonna knock me out. Like,
Yep. Hopefully, I'm right in the middle of it. Like,
yeah, actually, yeah, for real.
I don't want to be the guy scrounging around for scraps, fighting people over a Twinkie, right?
Because we all know the Twinkies will still be here.
Right, it's gonna last longer than anything else, right? A can of Spam and a Twinkie, right? Like,
Right.
am I really gonna kill some guy over a can of Spam and a Twinkie like that?
Right.
You know, I would. Anyway, yeah. So that.
Sorry, I
would
didn't
be,
mean to derail too much.
No, it's good. So the next subject is pretty interesting. It's in ways related. In South Korea, some scientists have announced that they've set a new world record for the time that they've sustained temperatures of 100 million degrees Celsius. So these people are pursuing nuclear fusion. For anyone who doesn't know, fusion is how the sun works, how stars work, and fusion is kind of the holy grail of energy generation.
Yeah.
Right now, when we talk about atomic energy, we're talking about fission, right? Which is cutting atoms apart. Fusion is when we merge them together and there's an energy output. And there's a lot of reasons you would rather do fusion than fission. We won't try to get into too much of that here. But I will say that nuclear fusion is, when you're talking about Iron Man and you're talking about Marvel, when you're talking about things like that, you're talking about reactor cores. That's what they're talking about, unlimited energy. And given how much humans fight over energy, and presumptively that's not what you would think when we talk about energy. It's like, well, there's oil, there's gas, there's hydro, there's all these things that we utilize to make energy, because it's a limited resource. You were talking about the iridium. I was thinking about it when you're like, oh, the iridium from these meteors. It's like, does Elon know about that? Because right, like he's gonna be down in a minute. So humans are on this constant consumerism arc, which demands more and more and more and more and more and more energy. So scientists are at the same time trying to say, how do we make more energy without ruining the planet in the process? And fusion is kind of the thing that they're shooting for. Now, they have achieved 100, think about what I'm saying here, 100 million degrees Celsius. That is 7 times hotter than the sun's core. How insane is that?
How did they contain that, though?
It's magnetic. So they have to contain it. Right? Now, when you think about that, though, what do you...
That's not scary at all.
Right?
What if some
movies that
Billy Bob accidentally flips the wrong switch at the wrong time? Like,
right. So they're out there and they're saying we're making something that's 100 million degrees Celsius.
Holy
it's
shit!
Hotter than the sun's core, and of course you're sitting there thinking, okay, why? Well, we want unlimited energy. Okay, how are you containing this? With really powerful electromagnets.
Yeah.
Okay, how much energy are you burning to generate this not energy? Right. So it is an interesting set of experiments and things they're trying to do, simply because the container part of the issue is how can you contain it and turn it into energy? That's part of the issue.
Because the issue, I think, up to this point too has been the energy produced is not exceeding the energy required to produce, right? And so the goal here would be to you give it a kickstart, the energy produced would feed back in, and then it would just be self-feeding at that point, and then some, right? Because at that point you would be able to hopefully power a city.
It's like getting an engine. It's the flywheel concept. If anyone's not familiar with a flywheel, that's how you create momentum, right? And if you're starting at the center of a huge wheel and you want to create momentum, it's really, really, really hard to get the thing started.
Yeah.
But once you get it started, it gets easier from every moment they're on to push it forward, because momentum starts taking over. Yeah. And the same thing with I think is the theory, at least, with nuclear fusion. So these folks were able to create this for 48 seconds. That's not nothing. A lot of times when you read these articles or you go through these journals and they say, oh, we created antimatter or whatever, and it's like it was for 0.777 nanoseconds.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's amazing, right? But that's not a meaningful amount of time. They got this thing running for 48 seconds. And their goal is 300 seconds by 2026. So for 48 seconds, 100 million degrees Celsius. And the learnings there are, how do we contain it? How do we control it? And at 48 seconds, you've proven you can make it, and you've proven you can contain it. Now, how long you contain it and the energy it takes to contain it is now the problem you have to solve. So If they get to 300 seconds, they believe 300 seconds in 2026 is actually that's where they say, okay, we've actually crossed the threshold where we believe this could become a viable thing.
Interesting.
So pretty fascinating stuff. South Korea doing some work out there, man.
It does scare me though that all this stuff. It was funny going back to our first topic. They were talking about all the things that were going on in the science world while this eclipse was happening. Like we were, NASA was launching satellites into the path of the eclipse to measure, the particles coming off of the sun, sure. And then you had the Hadron, the Hadron Collider, that they were
Hadron.
the CERN. Yeah, Hadron Collider. They were firing that off in the middle of the eclipse. It was like, all these things that you'd think would be happening in some sci-fi show for the end of the world. But yeah, I hope, because for some reason we have this, and a friend of Seven and mine, Sea Raptor, he knows a lot about nuclear power. And so if you really want to find a true green source of energy, I mean, nuclear power is where it's at, but we are so scared as a people of nuclear power that it's not something that we are willing to delve into more, it seems like. I don't know why, but I know why, but at the same time it's an unreasonable worry, I think, at this point. And then you have fusion power, which is supposed to be allegedly safer.
At 100 million degrees Celsius.
It sounds pretty freaking scary to me.
It sounds pretty dangerous. But it's supposed to be a lot of things, right? It's supposed to be, if they can figure out how to make it consistently, it's supposed to be better in a lot of ways. And to your point about nuclear power, you and I have talked a good bit about this just because of how we met and your experience. But we have ships, that are powered by nuclear energy, right? These are vehicles. And when you say ships, it's really easy to kind of write off and be like, oh, it's a ship. And it's kind of this in a lot of people's minds, when you say a ship, it's not really landing as a reality.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that is just a vehicle.
Yep.
It's a vehicle that humans have made for as long as humans have wanted to float. And it's a vehicle. And we decided at some point to figure out how to put a nuclear engine in a ship. And our aircraft carriers, predominantly, they're all that now at this point. Submarines that can go for a long time. And when I mean a long time, I mean like an indefinite period of time.
Yep.
And we're not having them blow up everywhere and cause all kinds of issues. And so it is something to be thought about. If we do have better sources of energy than we're using today, including solar, wind, right? There are cleaner sources than what we are using. There are better sources on the horizon. And so maybe fusion it's going to be interesting if someone does figure this out with fusion, right? And I think, look, science fiction, sure. Iron Man, though, is a great look at if someone figured out fusion, what's going to happen? Is a company going to make it? One of the things you and I talk about Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
We do talk about Elon Musk a bit. And one of the things that I think he did really was a great thing was making the battery technology they developed at Tesla available for other people to use.
Yep.
And is a company going to do that, or are they going to try to lock it down and weaponize it, or whatever the madness is that people dream up? And I really hope they just use it for the betterment of humanity, because unlimited energy could sure solve a whole lot of problems for us. Clean.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the interview with Elon where he finds out that there are people in Australia, and I just say Australia because that's what the interview was with an Australian journalist, that having power to your house, being able to turn a light switch on is not an attainable utility for everyone in Australia because of cost.
Yep.
And it actually stopped Elon Musk in his tracks because his brain just couldn't understand why power is not something that everybody should be able to have. I
think people, that's a great example, and this is a bit of a tangent, and I'm here for it. But I had a conversation with someone, and it's been a little while back, and the conversation was revolving around China and the United States and how they are frenemies a lot of times.
Right.
And someone was making a comment about the size of the Chinese populace and how it could be militarized. And the interesting thing there is we, as North Americans or as Americans in the United States of America, we put how we see the world and we have tried to apply that as if it applies everywhere. And that's just not true.
Yep.
There are enormous swaths of China which are still run by the communist regent who just goes occasionally and gets a message and brings it back and posts it on the wall. And that's the only communication that these villages have with the outside world.
Yeah.
The entire world is not like it is in Western Europe and North America, right? It is, the whole world doesn't operate in a very connected, electricity to your point, indoor plumbing. Like these are things that are very recent additions to our living spaces, and not everyone has them. And we do take for granted a lot of times that, oh, I mean, we've got it. I mean, this is the way the world works. It is actually not the way the world works.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that's a byproduct too of not traveling and seeing the other side of it too. I think a lot of people don't do enough of that in their lifespans. So, anyway,
and that was actually one of your.
Yep.
One of your Hapa's rules. Okay, so we are at let's see, what time is it? It's 8:21. Okay, so we're actually doing pretty good on time. However, we will move on, and we won't talk about people digging up bones to get high. Maybe we'll do that another time.
It's a pretty awesome topic. When I read that, look, we might as well. We can talk about this real briefly because I feel like we need to. We need to talk about this.
Briefly, we'll do this one, this podcast, and another one because this one's gonna.
Yeah. We'll bring it up again. I like your explanation of it, honestly.
So I found this article, and
Jesus,
and I sent it over to Hapa, and we considered it for this podcast, and we will try to keep this brief. It's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
Sierra Leone has declared an emergency because addicts are digging up graves to get high on a drug they make from human bones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that again, because there's no way the first time I said that to you.
I read it a couple times and was like, what?
Yes. Sierra Leone has declared an emergency because addicts are digging up graves so that they can get high on a drug made from human bones. So there's drug, and it has become such a widespread problem that dealers are turning into grave robbers. They're digging up
breaking bones.
They're digging up bones so that they can steal skeletons. You know.
So first of all, what are they doing? Are they smoking it, or are they? Or did they not talk about it?
Let's see.
I didn't know.
The drug is dubbed Kush, Kush, and it's obviously it's got several toxic substances. It's a psychoactive drug, but the main ingredient is ground up human bone.
I don't understand this. Why are we?
Where is? Does it tell you how to use it? Let me see if it tells you how to. It's not going to tell you.
Why are we as humans the way we are? Like, first of all, let's just get back to the beginning. Who was the first person to think of this?
Well, and we were joking before. It's like, go get Mima out of the ground. I'm gonna get high. Like, what the hell was someone thinking when they were like, I'm gonna make a drug out of human bones?
There's so many substances. Not that I advocate to use substances in that matter, but there's so many substances out there. How hard do you have to be up for a fix that you're like, let's go dig a body up and do this?
I just don't. There are so many other ways to get high, and I, like you, I'm not advocating getting high, but look, do me a favor if you're in Sierra Leone and you're listening to us. Kush is not the way. Try anything else.
Don't dig up Mima.
You're desperate. Leave Ethel on the ground, all right? Ethel needs to stay in the ground.
Let her rest, man.
This is not the way. This is not the way, Sierra Leone.
Why?
Get your shit together. Come on.
Why are we this way as humans? I don't. So we go from a topic that gives me hope for the future, which is fusion, to the topic that makes me question humanity.
Oh my god. Yeah.
If you guys are wondering how hard it is for us to find topics to talk about on the podcast, it is actually pretty freaking hard.
let's acknowledge that, Hapa.
In an
Y'all,
election year.
dude, it was hard last year. It is so much harder now. We try
Way
hard.
harder. Yeah, way harder.
We submit ourselves to the whimsy of news sites.
Yeah.
And neither of us are healthier for it.
No,
And
not at all.
we weed through the headlines to go find stuff, and we both try really hard to go to news sites that are the least biased, right, and the least editorial opinion.
Which, by the way,
And
let's just go ahead and
even
mention
so-
that is almost impossible nowadays. Like,
Oh, you're down to like a couple that you can even consider. And it is so hard to find headlines. But when I come across one that talks about people digging up graves to get high, I'm clicking it. So
I have to look what you actually, like, the words that you used. Where was it at? He said bruh, and then he sends me the article, and I read the first couple sentences, and my actual response was, what the actual fuck?
yeah. How do you even fit this in your head?
Yes, yeah. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so anyway, we're gonna talk about this again, I assure you. It'll be I'm you know what? I'm gonna make a note for myself because
Can't handle it. You can't handle it.
no,
We should talk about it again.
I want to know, like, on this topic, how often this happens around the world.
I would love to know. I would love to know how someone figured this crap out, man.
I mean, well, crap, that's a whole nother drug topic.
Yeah, it actually is. Yeah. All right, Hapa. Well, what you watch? How do you follow that? What you watching?
We won't have a transition for that, ladies and gentlemen.
I
We're
have
just gonna go
nothing. Where do I go from? Let's think for
I
a
don't
moment.
know, man.
I was trying in my head. It was like, what was it, Terminator? When it goes to the options of things you can say. I was like, segue. Nope. What you watching? Hapa?
Normally,
That's all I
7,
got.
by the way, is really good at segues. I mean, there's been some that I've been like, wow, you found a segue there. Not
I
this one.
tried, but
Yeah.
this time was just like, I don't know, people digging up,
All right.
Yeah.
You and I are going to talk about this for a minute, so I'm going to bring this up right away. 3
Okay.
body problem.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to talk spoilers. What did you and the wife think?
We very much enjoyed it.
On
I will
Netflix,
say
by the
that.
way.
Yeah, 3 Body Problem on Netflix, produced by Brad Pitt.
I didn't know
got
that.
Some great.
Wow, okay.
Got some great names behind it. Was originally a series of books, I think, or something along those lines, and it kind of follows the trend of shows and movies that you and I have been talking about, and I'm really
Yeah.
happy that they've been somewhat embraced. So I think we over-indexed on the superhero stuff for a while.
Yeah,
but one of
yeah.
the things that came out of that was people being willing to embrace science fiction, and you and I talked about it. The 3 body problem is an actual thing. If you want to go look at physics, like a 3 body problem is a thing. But a
Yeah.
couple of the shows that we've talked about recently, they are science fiction, but they are grounded in physics. And they really, and 3 body problem is no exception, where it is very much trying to be grounded in physics. Now, things get absolutely wild around episode 4 or 5.
Yep.
Somewhere, there's a point, right, middle of the season when it's like, oh,
We just tipped over.
yeah. And so there's it's interesting. I have a heavy interest, and maybe one day on the podcast we'll get into it, in nanofibers, and have been
Yeah.
very involved with some of that world, and nanofibers play like a pivotal role. And some of the things they were talking about and doing, I'm like, okay, they're trying to make the science apply. I very much enjoyed it. It's Netflix, man. It's Netflix. I really hope they don't just leave it where it was. I need season 2.
I like that you mentioned it. I think I've told you this before, and when Rita and I were watching this, I said this immediately. I wish this show was on Apple TV. Because are we going to get a season 2? We might. We might not. More than likely, they'll cancel it immediately because people like it. That seems to be Netflix's forte. Let's produce an amazing show. We'll end it on a cliffhanger. Everybody gets excited about it, and we just don't do it again. Like,
So let me tell you my true. It's gonna be hard to do without spoilers. No spoilers, I promise. But what I will say is Lost, the show Lost. Do you remember
Yeah.
Lost? Lost was a heartbreaker for me. because the first season and a half, 2 seasons of Lost were, in my opinion, brilliant.
Yeah.
And there were some concepts introduced and some mysteries introduced, and they went however many seasons, and they left some of those kind of hanging on the vine. I feel that Three Body Problem has introduced some concepts, and if they actually have a way to bring all of those back into a cohesive story, it will be fantastic. If they leave any of them hanging on the vine, the story will never be complete to me.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, for me, it just goes back to I call it the Netflix problem, because that's what it is. They tend to they have a great out the gate, a great setup. It's a good show in my opinion. It's worth binge watching, but I am very pessimistic at how it's going to turn out because specifically Netflix.
I've been burned by them before.
Yeah. I hope. I think I read recently they did confirm that they're in the talks for season 2. I didn't see whether they're doing it or not. But let me say this: the cast is fantastic. I love the cast.
Very well acted.
A lot of great actors. A lot of actors I haven't seen for a quick second. The guy's name I never remember. I just know that he's a Tully from Game of Thrones. Is one of the guys in there.
He was a Tully in Game of Thrones. He was indeed.
Yeah. I don't know. Don't ask me why I remember that
it
specifically.
But Tully.
Yeah, I don't remember his actual name. I just know he was a Tully. But no, honestly, if you like...
a Meister.
Yep, he became a Meister. If you do like sci-fi, I think Three Body Problem is a good show to watch. I think it's paced well. It does a good job of not over setting up the story. I think the flow of episode to episode was great. And it like Seven said, it ramps up around episode 4 or 5 and then just like sprints to the end of the season, which I think is fantastic. But yeah, so Three Body Problem, I've been watching that. I added Ripley to the list. Another Netflix show. If you want to sit and surf on your phone on the couch while a show is on in the background, Ripley is it.
How am I supposed to do that? Okay, good.
So let me backtrack a little bit.
Okay, all right.
Ripley is loosely based off of the movie The Talented Mr. Ripley, which is Matt Damon. Who else is in there? Gwyneth Paltrow, and I can never remember the other guy's name. Oh my god. What is the other guy's name? Jude Law. Kate Blanchett, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Jake Davenport. Great cast. If you haven't seen the movie The Talented Mr. Ripley, it's worth it. Rita and I watched episode 1. It got to the end, and I was like, I am not watching another episode of this show. It
was that bad?
It is excruciatingly slow. It's filmed in the noir.
Okay.
The noir kind of style.
That could be good. That could be so good.
It could be, but my problem is the story moves so slow. I just lost interest, man. I just lost interest. The reason I got so excited for that show specifically is the lead actor, and his, again, don't remember the name because I'm horrible at names. The actor in Ripley, he played Moriarty in Sherlock. He played, what was his name? I'm sorry. Let me find his name. Andrew Scott. I don't know if you know that name, but Andrew Scott, Dakota Fanning is in there. But yeah, the pacing on that show is so incredibly slow. I found, I joke all the time about having an internal monologue that, as men, we talk about wanting to be left alone and left in silence. But if I'm watching a show and it is so incredibly boring that I let my internal monologue just monologue and I go off into La La Land, I know I'm not watching a show.
Off.
So. Yeah. So yeah, if you really want to get bored, or if you want to surf on your phone and have something on the background, Ripley is it. Maybe it gets better. I don't know. I didn't want to find out.
Okay.
Now, I haven't seen this show yet, but I know you've watched it.
Yeah, I watched a couple of episodes, yeah.
It's on my list because, and Rita was really disappointed because she wanted to start watching it when it released, but I'm like, look, there's eight episodes. All of the episodes are out and live, and I would like to sit down and literally watch all 8 back to back to back.
Oh, just to binge it straight through. I think that would actually, I will say, so he's talking about Fallout.
Yes,
so the
Fallout.
show that Hapa talking about
On
is Fallout.
Amazon.
So I was texting Hapa and Deacon last night, and I just discovered another conversation we should have is about the Army of One movie with Nick Cage, which is based on a true story on a guy that went hunting with Osama bin Laden on his own in Pakistan.
As one does.
I fell into the Wikipedia article about this guy and was like, okay, there's a movie. Holy crap. So apparently this guy was like, oh, the only person that could play me in the movie is Nick Cage. And Nick Cage is actually the guy playing in the movie. In the movie, Nick Cage plays the guy saying that about Nick Cage, which is very hilarious. I was watching that movie, so I was feeling a little bit ridiculous anyway. Because I was, let's be honest, it was a complete guilty pleasure to even sit and watch it. But I was watching it, and I was laughing, we were having a good time, and then I saw Fallout was on, because the movie was on Amazon Prime. And so I saw Fallout was on. I was like, turn that on. So Mel was in the living room with me. Bree was there, and we were watching. And the first episode is it feels movie length.
Nice.
So it's not like it's a short show where they leave a bunch of stuff out. They take some time, they develop things, and it moves really. The pace is fantastic. It's a little brutal. So if you're not familiar with the Fallout series, it's a series of games, and just know the show's not going to pull punches. So
that's good, actually. That's good.
As it should be, right? And so we got through 2 episodes. We started on the 3rd one. We're not through it yet. I will say at this point, here's what happened, and here's how you will know. I would watch it anyway. It's a Fallout show. I'm going to watch it. Yeah. Mel, who knows nothing about Fallout, never spoke. Do you know what that takes? Right?
I'm not gonna be sexist. Okay, I am gonna be sexist here. Watching any show, and it's not so. To my credit, I told Rita this. It's not just a Rita thing, because I am convinced that every woman has 12 or 13 people in their brains talking at all the same time, and whoever they don't know who has control of the mouth at any given time, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I say as men, we need that chaos in our lives sometimes. But watching shows is a little frustrating sometimes.
Yes. Mel just texted me. I'm gonna talk now.
Oh yeah. You like me? You like me talking?
Yeah. You choose to watch the podcast tonight. Thanks.
Yeah. Of all times.
But I realized. So Mel and Bree are here, right, watching the show with me. Mel, we're 40 minutes in, and no one has spoken. Mel's not talking. Mel and Bree aren't talking. They always go back and forth, not in a bad way. They always have a banter. They're not talking. Bree's kind of engaged. Well, DJ wanders in. What are y'all doing? We're watching the show. Okay, cool. He sits down, puts his headphones on, and starts messing with his phone. About 5 minutes later, he's looking at the screen. About 10 minutes later, his phone is away and his headphones are off. About 15 minutes later, he's under a blanket with his feet propped up, staring at the
Hell yeah.
So the show, wherever you drop in, and that's the point I'm making, wherever you dropped in, the pace was so good, and the show was so good that it was like, oh, that's good. So yeah, I've so far been very impressed. I hope they keep it up. So there is an actor in it. What is the guy's name? I love the guy. He is.
Are you talking about he's the narrator, but also a character in the?
You and I are going to laugh because I recognize him from Righteous Gemstones. Walton Goggins.
Nope, yep, that's the guy, yeah.
Yeah, Walton Goggins is in it, and so that's pretty fantastic. And
so you didn't recognize he's the narrator also?
Is he?
Yes, at the beginning, he's the one in the advertisement for the vaults.
Okay, so he's in the show. As an actor as well. So yeah, Walter Goggins, he's great. And
I love that guy.
Uncle Baby Billy.
Yeah, man.
Fantastic. So yeah, good show. Fallout.
Are we in right now like a renaissance for sci-fi? Do you think? because
may
there
end
are
up
so many good sci-fi shows between, and we've talked about it a million times, Apple TV, but there are so many good sci-fi shows out right now. Like, it's crazy, right? Like,
Yep. Yep. I don't. I'm. Mel and I sat down the other night and we did the thing where it's like, okay, we want a new show. We're watching 1899 on your recommendation.
love
Problem
it.
is, well, the problem is we're watching it with both kids as well.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
if one of the kids is off doing something else, we're not going to watch it. So I was like, I want another show. What I really wanted to do was watch 1899,
Right.
but I was like, I need another show. And so we're doing the thing where you go through all your streaming services and you're looking for another show.
Right.
And I will say Fallout filled that really well, but
Okay.
that's because we go through Apple TV and it's like all these science fiction shows. That's what I'm
So
looking
many.
for, is more of that. I'm
Yeah,
enjoying
yeah,
it and I want more
yeah.
and more and more of that. And then you've got movies like Dune 2, right? You've got, I don't know, man, maybe mass media and science,
We're
maybe
hitting
maybe it
that
is a
point,
renaissance.
maybe? I hope so,
I hope
because,
so.
I mean, obviously, I'm a nerd and I'm all about the nerdum, but, if we can have a world of that, I'm happy. So, it's fantastic.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So,
But-
now go ahead. We're going to do,
No, you're fine.
what am I listening to?
Yeah, what you listen to, man?
I'm listening to, so
Oh, man,
Again.
you got some good freaking names on that
Ah.
list.
I know. You, I sat down Friday, so every Friday, for anyone who doesn't know or is not used to listening to the podcast, every Friday I sit down and put together a playlist of albums that come out that day. Now, the next week I spend that week listening to that playlist start to finish. I don't do singles, I don't do ever. I will listen to start to finish. I will judge an artist based on whether or not they can make an album. Making a single does not impress me. So, having said that, when I put together the playlist on Friday, I was like, are you kidding me with this playlist? And so what I will tell you is I'm going to run through some of the names where there's some obvious ones. The Black Keys have a new album out called
Yeah,
The
hell yeah.
Players. Don't miss it. There's a lot of collaborations on there. Very good stuff. They did some work with Beck on it. Great
wow.
stuff. Yeah, there's a band, however, I had not heard of. They are from Texas. You should check them out. They're called Blacktop Mojo.
I know these guys.
And do you? They have this album called Pollen.
Pretty sure I've seen them
Fantastic
live in Southeast Texas. Pretty sure.
They are great.
Yeah,
they
yeah,
are
yeah.
fantastic. They've got a really good 90s kind of grunge feel
Yep.
that's modernized, and the vocalist can pull it off. It's a really great band. There was a new album from Marcus King. If you don't know Marcus King, he's got new
Oh,
albums called
God.
Mood Swings. If you like soul music, Marcus King,
Yes.
really good. And this album, Hapa in particular, is a turn it on track one and let it run kind of album. You can just go
Okay.
straight through with it. It's really good. And then finally, Vampire Weekend. Grateful Dead influenced band. Vampire Weekend is always a band I will listen to. And this album is, I don't think it's their best, but I do think it's really good. It's still Vampire Weekend, and they sound really good. And the name of the album is Only God Was Above Us. They came out Friday. Now, having said all of that, there is an album that came out from a band called Bayside. Now, Bayside is a band from New York, and the name of the album is There Are Worse Things Than Being Alive. And I will tell you, that album, it came out of the chute, track one, and got my attention, and it never let me
Okay.
go. So
Nice.
I wouldn't put them necessarily, I wouldn't put that album up there with some of the other ones I mentioned, but I will say one of the things I love about these playlists is I'm finding new acts, and I found a new act in Bayside. If they come through Birmingham, Alabama, they want to play at Saturn, let me know. I will absolutely go see them. So
Interesting.
yeah, good stuff, man. Don't miss the Marcus King, though. Don't miss that. And you probably wouldn't anyway, but Marcus King is
No,
on point.
I love that dude's voice.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah.
All right, Hapa. So what you playing, my man? What games you playing?
Nothing new, if I'm being honest with you. I've
Yeah,
been looking
yeah.
at a lot of things. I can't talk more positively. I think I've mentioned it every single week for like the last 2 months, but Helldivers 2, which, by the way, Helldivers 2 is getting a lot more attention than just the game being what it is, by the way, because it's a privately owned company. The CEO is very open about the fact that they aren't doing a lot of the crap that Bethesda or Blizzard or EA or DICE or whatever are doing. They're doing their own thing, and they've been, awarded with 8 weeks of being like top 5 selling game.
Yep.
And it's a live service game that has
A truly live
hilarity
service
and lore behind it. It has, they literally every other day, like the map is constantly changing and you have to react to what's going on, and it's just insane. The game is just crazy. It's a little rough if you're playing with folks you don't know, because you do need to have a bit of cooperation depending on the difficulty level that you're playing, but it is just like, so I don't play honestly unless Rita and my brother are on, all 3 of us will join in, and a 4th will hop in or whatever. But we have a lot of fun with that game. That game is just good old fashioned, and I was trying to figure out why the game is so popular, and I read an article recently. It was talking about the reason they think that Helldivers 2 is so popular is it brings back the days of when you used to load up Halo and do the campaign in co-op with your friends. Like, you weren't try hard PvPing, you were working together, strategizing and trying to work through the campaign. And you don't have a lot of that in games nowadays at all.
You really don't.
You really don't. And what I find really funny is I've always seen feedback of players, the player base is wanting that, but the company's constantly saying no, PvP. PvP has to be the way. PvP, you have to be shooting other players.
You and I have been talking, and I still have not picked up Helldivers. I am going to. When I get some time to actually dedicate and sit down and play it, I'm going to no-life it for a couple of days. And you and I have been talking a lot, going back and forth about this, with some of the private company CEOs speaking out. So Helldivers as an example, Larian Studios as an example, with Baldur's Gate 3. Like, these people are speaking out and they're saying there is a different way to approach this industry, and it's by doing the things that the gamers want to do. And what is fascinating to me is live service games are what companies like EA want to focus on. And the reason for that is they believe they will make more money doing that. Like the Warner Brothers CEO said, I don't want to do another Hogwarts Legacy. Are you kidding me? That's one of the greatest games. That is an amazing game. We don't want to make those. We want to make live service games. Oh, here's the problem. You suck at live service games. Why don't you make good games instead? And for whatever reason, as those companies get bigger, they ignore what players want. There are so few games nowadays that have just a core gameplay loop that is so fun that it keeps you wanting to play it. Just so few. And some of the ones that we've played together are forgetting how to do it. Right? Well, there are some games that we played together that had like core gameplay loops that were super addictive. Get on with your friends, even if it was PvP, PvE. It didn't matter. You had a lot of fun. They're forgetting how to do it. So Helldivers came out, live service game. Everything I've seen from them and everyone I've talked to who plays this says great things about it.
They're hitting a home run. I mean, in every aspect too. And I don't think that there's, like, it's not a game that's lacking. Like, their art department, the game is beautiful. Like, when you're on the planet and you've got a lull in the action, you can look off into space. Some of the planets are insane. You can see planets like you're right next to one with rings, or there's meteor showers, and just everything that they've done in that game is fantastic. And I hope that they continue to be as successful as they are. Like, I mean, I talked about it before, how there's a game master for the game. Like, he literally plays with things in the game to screw with the community. Really, that's his only job. And so it's become this meme on social media about Joel. Like, Joel, please don't hurt me, Joel. That's his name. His name is Joel. But so Helldivers, awesome, beautiful game. I hope that they continue to have success. We've talked about it a million times too. War Thunder, another game that I love playing with friends. I don't care to play with it too much by myself, because it's just another game that if you're with friends and you're able to coordinate, you're just going to have a better outcome in general. I am, again, I've said this multiple times, I am waiting for Space Marine 2. I'm waiting for, there's a few games getting released this year that I'm just excited and can't wait, and just just tapping my fingers and just waiting time. So I think later this year it's going to be
that
fun.
boat too. There's some that we're excited about. I can't wait to talk about some of those.
Yeah. So
yeah, Rita brought up in the chat channel here on YouTube, and it's something we've talked about before, which is when people with an MBA, Masters of Business Administration, get into a company, they generally understand economics very well, and that's kind of what their passion is and their education is, and they don't understand games. So they don't understand the art, right? And that is true for the music industry. That's true for a lot of things. That's why Netflix cancels shows, right? It's not about the art. It's about some
money,
economic decision.
Yep.
And I think, so I wrote down Hapa in our spreadsheet there that I actually would like for us to do that as a segment on a podcast soon.
For sure.
Just, what have we seen? We've been gaming for a long time, both of us. And you could probably, if we sat down and got serious about talking about it, we've seen some trends in the gaming industry. And it probably gives us a decent viewpoint on where are things now and where are companies missing and where are some of the companies hitting, like Helldivers, right? I think that's a great example, because we went through, BattleBit. Like, there's all these games that we went through. Baldur's Gate 3, Last Epoch is currently in my, these are small teams that do great things. And so, I think that's a good subject for us to talk about future state.
Yeah, totally.
All right, Hapa. So we're going to wrap it up. We got about 9 minutes. We're going to wrap it up with Hapa's rules, and then the loop around on where did these rules come from. I think we've gotten kind of, what are we at, like 20 or something?
Yeah, we're at actually 19 is the start, so you're almost dead on there.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Essentially just rules that I've accumulated over the years, and I don't even remember why I just decided to start writing them down. I think it was like a mentoring tool for when I was a chief, and I had sailors that would, come to me for professional advice. And sometimes personal advice, because when you're in the Navy and you're senior enlisted, you're often mom and dad. For those of you that don't know, I'm trying to take care of your sailors, take care of your people, take care of you, kind of thing. And I think that's why I started writing them down. Like, I used to usually actually email this list to them and say, hey, try to live your life this way. It's been successful for me. Maybe it'll help you. I think that's kind of where they came from. But we went through these rules before, and I just read them off quickly, and then, like, I think a week later you had asked, well, would you mind talking about where some of these came from? It's like, yeah, of course I wouldn't mind at all. So, but let's get this kicked off. 19, always strive to learn and grow. I think that's a good thing to live by as a human. Like, no matter how old you are, you should be trying to learn something or grow in some way, right? I think the moment you just say, well, I've learned enough for my life, I think you're on your way out the door. Unfortunately, that's just my personal opinion.
Oh, I agree with you. You are in decline, and that is the nicest way to say it.
Yeah. 20 is, this one has actually been very big deal to me over my later years so far, is sit outside, listen to the birds, crickets, and children laugh. I will tell you, for those of you with kids, once those kids are grown and gone and they're not in your house anymore, even the fights that they have, you're going to miss that ruckus and that noise in the background. I am lucky enough that across the creek behind my house, I've literally got 4 houses that I think each of them have like 3 kids each. And they've got a basketball hoop set up at the end of the cul-de-sac. So when they're playing out there, especially when the weather's perfect like this, I'll have that back sliding door open. I can just hear them playing, and that to me is like a symphony. Like, it's beautiful. Every single morning I get up, and the very first thing I do is I'll let the dog out, and I'll go sit on the back patio and kind of just chill on the patio for about half hour, 45 minutes. And usually one of the last things I do at night is I go out there and just sit out there and listen to the crickets. Or we're rolling into frog season, which it's going to be a crapshoot if we either have a frog sitting on the porch next to me or not pretty soon here. But listen to them, and it is something that I think we take for granted, like just the sounds of a relaxed life. But you need to appreciate that. Take some time. 21, be a critical thinker. I'm not always right. I know that's hard for some people to believe, but neither are you, right? And I think that's also something I used to bump heads with a lot of my fellow leaders when I was in the Navy. It's like, it's okay for you to say, I don't know, but let's go find out together. Like, literally, some of those leaders tried to give off an aura like they knew everything. And I think that's just silly. That's just dumb. And as a leader or a manager, you should never give off an aura where you know everything, right? I used to say the best leaders aren't the ones that knew everything. They're the ones that knew where to look to find out everything, because that's just the best way to be. 22, search and strive for quality, not quantity. I think that applies in every aspect of life. You can have a million piles of poop, right? That doesn't mean that you're sitting rich, right? Like, quality should be what you're aiming for. Like, you know, I'm not
a million piles of poop, he says.
Yeah, but if they're shiny poops, then you're happy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a materialistic person, but I do, if I'm gonna buy something. Like, Seven and I were talking about headphones before we went live. To me, good quality headphones are important to me. So owning a bunch of headphones isn't necessarily what I'm shooting for, but if they're good quality, I'll spend a lot of money on that one thing. Like, that's, you know, what I want. Challenge is good. I've always said to everybody in every aspect of life also, challenge yourself to learn, challenge yourself to do better, challenge yourself to whatever the case may be. You should be, you know, that goes along lines with, you know, learning and growing. You should be challenging yourself too. The next two are pretty cliche. I know everybody's got, I think every married couple has that little sign in their kitchen that says live, laugh, love, but it's, you know, laugh and love. You know, you need to laugh. Laughing is important in life. If you're the grumpy person, nobody's going to want to be around you, and quite frankly, your quality of life is going to be not great. I think it's been scientifically proven, right, that laughing actually releases tension. So it's kind of good to
there's a quote there, man. A buddy of mine who was an improv actor, I learned a lot from this guy. Business-wise, and there's a quote he used to have, which is one of my favorites, which is, if you're not having fun, you're the asshole.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
if you look around and you're not having fun, yeah, you're probably it.
Yeah, and you know, the two things that he probably stuck out was yes and. I don't know if you're familiar with that. In improv, your job is to always say yes and. You never say no. Right, because the only way this scene can continue is if you say yes and if you're not having fun, you're the asshole. And I'm like, dude, you can take that that travels. Right?
Yeah,
so
that's fantastic.
Laugh, enjoy life, whatever you're doing. If you're not having fun, you shouldn't be doing it, whatever it is.
I think that was one of the things that many of you know, my mom passed away last year, and one of the things that I thought about my mom growing up is even when she was mad, I remember those very few times, but I remember my mom laughing at everything and anything. Like, and that's like a fantastic way to live. Like, to be able to be happy like that is fantastic. So, 26 is don't mourn those that are gone, celebrate the life. I'm a big fan of the idea of a wake, not a funeral. Like, I know that's rough for some people to think about, but if that's the best way to think about someone, is those happy times. You know what I mean? 27 is help others unconditionally, pay it forward. So, you know, opening a door for somebody. If someone asks for help, you give them the help. Don't think you're going to get something back. Don't expect something back. I think that's kind of something that we as humans kind of is like a normal thought. But if you can break from that and just do it just to do it, it's great. 28, snakes will try to sneak into your life, see the writing on the wall, and remove them. This one came from, in my life, I've had a lot of people that I thought were friends, but after I recognized they were kind of toxic in my life, I realized why they were my friends. Like, they were trying to get something from me. And that's why I wrote that the way I did, is like, you know, realize that some people might come into your life because they want something. They may not necessarily be there when you need them. So you got to start valuing the people that are in your life for the right reasons, right? And lift those people up, I think that's really important. Not enough people think about that stuff. And then surround yourself with personalities that lift you up, not anchors that drag you down. It's kind of hand in hand, right? 28 and 29. It's the same thing. Both of those, I remember specifically why I wrote those, and we won't go into that here because it's a longer story, but it essentially was somebody that I thought was a really good friend of mine, and they turned out to be an actual very toxic influence in my life, and I was actually a lot happier once they were gone. So, but yeah.
I've had a few of those.
I'm sure. And I think everybody has those, like, we joke as we get older, our circle of friends gets tighter, and I think that's you tend to screen more. You tend to screen more what you want in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. So.
I do, and one of the ones you brought up, several of those I would love to talk for an hour about just the ones, but the concept of rightness has always been really fascinating to me. Meaning, someone thinks they're right about something, right? And contextually, if you believe you're right about something, that means everyone else is either agreeing with you or wrong.
Yeah.
And you literally, just by the attitude of imagining that you are right, have sucked the wind out of everyone else's sails. And so, from a leadership standpoint, if you're going to be a leader, the best way to avoid being wrong is to assume you're wrong.
Yeah.
And if you do that, everyone else will help you be less wrong. And that's how you move forward. It's such a toxic thing to watch leaders who have this concept of being right. And it's always, for me, really hard to watch when someone who's a great up-and-comer, you can look at them, they got all the talent in the world, they just need 3 years of experience, and they're working for someone who's going to hold them down by saying, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. And it's always been fascinating. So that one, to me, that one hits pretty close to home.
But at the same time, the opposite, when you recognize that you have the thought process that you're not always right, if you're able to ask, am I wrong, to a group of folks and actually mean it, like actually mean the question, the feedback that you start having and the rapport you start having with your people is, I mean, you can't put a price on that.
Well, it's and maybe we'll talk about leadership at some point. That might be a fun one. You and I.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's an hour about leadership. That might be fun. I've learned a lot from you over the past couple of years when we've talked about these things, and I think it'd be a fun conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, man. Well, I think we're wrapped.
We're there.
Hapa.
Are we there?
We are right on time. Look at us.
Hey,
that's pro. That is pro. So let's run through. Appreciate everyone hanging out. If you like watching live, we are on YouTube. We got some great folks hanging out with us. We try to talk about chat here and there, but we also don't try to just make it about chat like we would do with our streams, our live streams. But you can hang out with us on YouTube. It's Real Talk with Hapa and 7. If you like podcasts, and I hope that you do, because this is a podcast. If you don't, what the hell are you doing here?
But stay.
You can check us out on. Yeah, that's on you. You're the asshole. You can check us out on Spotify. Right, we're over there with Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe tries to keep us on Spotify. I mean, we argue with him back and forth. Do we want to be on Spotify or not? He tells us that we ought to be over there. So we'll hang out with him.
We stay. We decide
we'll stay. It benefits him that we stay, and he needs the help. So, so we'll stick there. But also you can get YouTube, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, right? We do, Hapa does a good job of distributing the podcast. That's part of his role in the organization, is making sure we're out there, and we're everywhere. We're literally everywhere. But Hapa, how can people
Jamaica
find
looking at you?
Hapa?
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Jamaica, hit us up. We want to record this in Kingston. Rock yourself to the rhythm of the engines, man. So that would be so much fun.
It would be amazing.
I would just let the background noise be the.
It would be amazing.
So Hapa, let's say someone wants to reach out and wants to talk to Hapa Fodder. How are they going to do it?
If you Google Hapa_Fodder, HAPA_FODDER, 9 times out of 10, I'm almost positive 100% actually. I'm sure that Feet Finder or OnlyFans, probably somebody's got those two on lockdown. You got
that reserved. Don't even start.
I should probably. Never mind. No, you'll more than likely you're going to find me. I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, everywhere. If you look me up that way, you'll find me. And varying degrees of content, whatever it is, I'm there. And that's pretty simple way to find me. What about you? How can people find 7?
Basically the same way. I've had this name since 1995, which is why it is, in Meat Speak. So it's legit. But S3VYN, if you find that name anywhere, it is me. Twitter's easy. X, whatever they want to call it tomorrow. Someone said something to me. You can't call it Twitter, it's X. And I'm like, oh, now you understand dead naming. Okay. Oh, now it's gonna mean something. But here's the funny thing about Twitter. If you go to x.com, it redirects you to twitter.com. So Twitter
I found that amusing.
Amusing. They still call themselves Twitter, so there's a whole identity crisis. However, you can find me there. You can also find me on Twitch here and there. I've cut down my personal streaming as just life's been busy, but Mel and I do stream occasionally on Saturdays. However, I do keep up with Twitch. I'm over there watching Hapa. I'm over there watching Rita, Deacon. I'm over there hanging out a lot. So if you were to send me a direct message on Twitch, I would get it. Also, you can email me, right? It's 7@VII.tv, and you can find me there. So that's probably the easiest ways to get in touch with me.
So one of the things we've been mentioning, I think pretty regularly, is the fact that topics are a little rough. Finding topics,
Oh my gosh.
digging topics is a little rough. If
Don't
there
make
is
us look
something,
at the news sites, guys. Save us.
especially right now with all the political crap, it's rough to sift through. And actually, to our credit, the one thing I will be pretty prideful of is Seven and I do a pretty good job, I think, of finding subjects that we know we can talk about and that we know we're probably going to have fun with.
Yep.
But if you out there listening have a topic you think you might like to hear our points of view on or want to hear us talk about, message one of us on Discord. You can send us messages on whatever social media platform. You can email us, Hapa and 7 Real Talk @gmail.com. That's the word and, not an ampersand, because you can't do that in emails, whatever the case may be. But let us know, or put a comment on the YouTube video here. We would love to hear what you guys might want us to talk about. We do try to steer clear. I don't think we try. We do steer clear away from political stuff, because it just, you open a whole door, a whole can of worms. That's just a garbage.
We do that intentionally, and I want to. Let's close with this, right? Because we do that intentionally.
Sure.
I want everyone to realize Hap and I agree on very little in that space.
Yeah.
And love each other anyway. And so just know that when we talk about we don't do politics, it's not because he and I can't have those conversations. It's because everybody else is talking about that crap, and it's really draining. It is too much. And
draining is a good word for it, actually.
It's just draining.
Yeah.
You know, it's the world's a hard ass place, man.
Yeah.
And spending time talking about stuff like that, while it's important things, there's very little most of us can practically do about it. So it really is just an exercise in disagreement.
Exactly.
And it's not really worth our time. But to Hapa's point, it is hard, y'all, to find topics. So please let us know and save us from having to scroll. I would love for us to get to the point where the podcast is made up of topics that found us rather than topics that
that'd be fantastic. Yeah, for
that'd
sure.
be amazing.
Yeah. I would love that. But either way, now it's time to say goodbye to all our company or something. before we get DMCA'd on YouTube.
What was it? Some of my people that I used to work with in Minneapolis said there was a Minneapolis goodbye. They go, well.
And that's it. That's just it. Just well.
That's it. That's your signal. That's your signal to get up and leave. Well.
I should have just hit the stop right there. Well.
Well,
we appreciate you guys listening and hanging out. For those of you that do both, we appreciate it. Do the like, subscribe thing. We'd love to see reviews, too. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple TV, if you guys want to leave a review for the podcast, please do. I'm getting tired of writing my own reviews on my own content, so it'd be nice to have somebody else on there. Hopefully you guys take care of yourselves. You take care of each other, laugh and smile like we've been talking about. Like, there's just too much just crap out there in the world today, and we don't want you guys to have to partake in it. So get outside and touch some grass and see some sunshine. Don't look directly in the sun, as we were talked about today. Please don't do that.
I may not be a doctor.
Yeah. I'm not an expert, but it's probably not a good idea. Anyway, we'll see you guys next time. Should be in about 2 weeks. What day is that, by the way? Should be end of April-ish?
That'd be the 23rd. Yeah, April
there
the 23rd.
Go. Hopefully we'll have our next podcast on there. If we don't, we usually we reserve the right to kick to Thursday and possibly the following Tuesday. So either way, hope you guys have a great night. Take it easy. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.